With the completion of my book Recollections and the encouragement by Barney Galpin, producer of this videotape, it was felt that I should select events from my book portraying the history of the Abram Links family to be presented to the Scottish Jewish Archives, which is housed in Garnet Hill Synagogue. Having plundered several photograph albums and old newspaper cutting books of long standing, I feel confident I have assembled sufficient material to present a worthy and interesting story depicting events of note which may have been forgotten over the past 80 years or so. The research required was considerable and interesting, and I derived much pleasure in doing it. I trust my efforts will bring back pleasant memories and perhaps a smile to those who view this. If it achieves this, then it will have been well worthwhile. The surname Links, which means left-handed, probably dates from 1787, when Jews in Austria-Hungarian Empire were required to take a surname. The Links family lived in eastern Galicia, near the Russian border. This area is now western Ukraine, and Jews made up 10% of the population in Galicia, and in some cities, such as Tarnopol, they formed the majority of the population. Most received all their education at Hebrew school, Cheder, though 20% did go to the gymnasium. Abram Links was brought to Scotland during 1885, aged 5, by his father Ossius, accompanied by Abram's sister Jeannie and his brother Solomon, from Tarnopol, Austria. Solomon, known as Solly, adopted the Links name on his mother's marriage to Ossia. They were bound for USA, but only got as far as Leith due to the lack of funds, and they settled in the Gorbals area of Glasgow. Ossius becoming a licensed broker. He died in 1904, aged 47, and is buried in the western necropolis Maryhill. My father was born in 1886. He had some education at Gorbals Secondary School, but one could really term him as a self-educated man, as far as adult education was concerned. He had to deliver milk and newspapers before and after school hours to augment the family income. He married Dora Wiener from Leeds in 1908. They had 7 children, one of whom died at birth. The 6 children were Hannah, born in 1909, Janie, 1911, Morris, 1913, Nora, 1915, David, 1916, and Muriel, 1924. On leaving school, my father became a packman, travelling throughout Scotland, selling drapery of all sorts, eventually opening a small warehouse in South Portland Street, Gorbals. From there he moved to Main Street, Gorbals, and in 1913 to number 21 Candleriggs. In 1915, consequent to the Great War, the business was sold. He started again in 1917 in Candleriggs, selling children's and dolls' dresses, which were made by my mother in a workroom at the back of the shop. Between 1919 and 1936, my father built the business, which grew considerably, and larger premises were achieved by rebuilding in Wilson Street between 1936 and 1939. Dora, his wife, died of septicemia in 1936 at the timely age of 39, Abram being left with 6 children. His mother-in-law, Hassa Berwitz or Shoresman, came to live with the family in 125 Leonard Road. Abram remarried in 1929 Annie Davis from Sunderland. She was known as Auntie to all the family and close friends. This marriage was very successful, and moving to Netherby Drive, Pollokshields in 1936. My father was a conforming religious Jew and a staunch Zionist, with a particular affection for the Jewish National Fund, and an ardent worker for the cause and a leader in the Glasgow Jewish community. He had a strong wish that one day a Jewish state would be established in Palestine and that one of his family would settle there. His hope lay with me, his son David, of whom more later. Abraham Links was the recipient of a Golden Book certificate recognising his 3-year chairmanship of the Jewish National Fund in Glasgow. Present at the ceremony were Leopold Shen of London. He was also associated with the Glasgow Tarbut, Glasgow Zionist Organisation, Hebrew University. At this gathering, the Farm City Group was established and a forest of trees to be planted in Palestine. The Farm City scheme never got off the ground. His first trip to Palestine was in 1932, and on his return he suggested that I go to Mikveh Israel in Palestine to study agriculture. I went there in 1934, aged 17, and took the course for 18 months, deciding that agriculture was not for me. I am sure that this was a great disappointment to him. On my return to Glasgow, I entered the family business of A. Links and Company Limited. My eldest sister, Hannah Links, married Benjamin Shribman and settled in Belfast. They had 3 sons, David, Michael and Victor. David is an accountant in London. Michael and Victor eventually made Aliyah and are both living in Israel with their families. My second sister, Jane A. Links, married Harry Sochert, a manufacturing furrier, and remained in Glasgow. They had 1 daughter, Doreen. Both Hannah and Janie were educated at Hutchinson Girls' Grammar School. My brother Morris, Moshe Ben Sion, first attended Battlefield School. From there he went to Hutchinson Boys' Grammar School, later entering Glasgow University, where he gained a master's degree, taking history, Hebrew as his second language. The authorities at first would not accept this. However, finally agreeing after much level discussion, Hebrew was accepted as a subject for an MA degree. Morris was a very active and clever man, a confirmed Zionist, and held major positions in the various Zionist societies in the city: the Jewish National Fund, the Haifa Technion, the Glasgow Art Club. He eventually was elected as a governor of the Haifa Technion. His business activities were many. His interest in the Jewish Athletic Club was very important to him, becoming president until 1939, when most of the young men and women joined the armed forces or were employed in war work in various kinds. The clubhouse and tennis courts situated in Isle Lane at the summit of Campbell Avenue were destroyed by fire, and on peace being won, there were not enough funds to start up again. Nora Links, my third sister, was educated at Battlefield Junior School, from where she entered Hutchinson Girls' Grammar School. On finishing school, she came into the family business, later in the fashion section, finally as buyer of ladies' blouses and dresses. She married David Lewis, a manufacturer's agent. They had 2 daughters, Dorothy and Judith, settling in Glasgow. David Nehemiah Links, named after maternal grandfather Nehemiah Wiener, also entered at Battlefield Junior and Hutchinson Boys' Grammar Schools, and 3 years at Macaulay House Boarding School in Cuckfield, Sussex, England, where I celebrated my bar mitzvah. I returned to Glasgow aged 16 and entered the family business as a trainee. in all the various departments, becoming a traveller for north of Scotland, Northern Ireland and the Irish Free State. It was at this period that my father thought his dream was about to come true. At the age of 17, I left Glasgow for Palestine to study agriculture at Mikveh Israel Agricultural College. But this was not to be. And I returned to Glasgow and continued my activities in the family business. On September 1939, war was declared against Germany, and I volunteered for the Royal Air Force and was accepted by them. Spending a holiday in Bournemouth with my brother Morris prior to reporting to my unit at RAF Pargate, I met Irene Sotnick from Portsmouth, second daughter of Malka and Jacob Sotnick. This event obviously changed the direction of my life. We eventually became engaged on Rosh Hashanah in 1941. Despite my commanding officer's assurance that he requested that I should be on his staff at RAF Henlow for the duration, and that Irene and I should carry on with our plans to marry. We married in St John's Wood Synagogue, London, on January the 4th, 1942. And alas, I was drafted overseas after only being married for 5 weeks. I served 3.5 years in the Middle East, Egypt, Palestine and Tripolitania, and spending 18 months in the Western Desert, attached to Montgomery's 8th Army. Irene and I were separated for the entire 3.5 years. Returning to Britain in 1944, I demobbed at RAF Cardigan on the 11th of November 1945. During my time overseas, Irene stayed with her family and were evacuated to Fishbourne, near Chichester, returning to Glasgow on my release from the RAF. We set up home in Newtonburns, where Jonathan and Deborah were born. We now come to the youngest member of the family, Muriel Lynx. She was educated at Hutchinson Girls' Grammar School, and on leaving school entered Glasgow University, where she gained an MA degree. After graduation, she fulfilled her war commitment at Nairn's factory in Kirkcaldy as a progress chaser. Nairn's were manufacturing equipment for the armed forces. When war ended, she taught English at some of the Glasgow schools, and in 1947 she married Lieutenant Sidney Harris, who was still in the army, and on his release they married. As the National Health Service was just starting, he had no medical practice, so they decided to make Aliyah and settle in Israel, where he obtained a position with the Kupat Chalim as a radiologist. By this time, Israel had declared their independence in 1948. Muriel then taking a teacher's position in one of the Herzliya high schools. My father's dream was at long last showing signs of becoming a reality. In the first part of this video, I gave a brief synopsis of the immediate members of the Abraham Lynx family. I now intend to present an insight into the events and activities of some of these members. This information may not be in strictly chronological order, but I trust it will be of some interest. The firm of A. Lynx was founded in 1907 and flourished until the advent of the Great War in 1914, when circumstances made it advisable to close. Abraham Lynx recommenced trading again in 1919 and opened a small warehouse in Candleriggs, Glasgow. The business prospered and larger premises were required, and he moved to Wilson Street, where he purchased part of a three-story building. Over the years, the entire building was acquired. Still prospering over the years, still larger accommodation was urgent, and between 1936 and 1939 he built a 7-story building on the existing site. This was achieved in 3 phases. The foundation stone was laid by Annie D. Links in May 1936. Trading continued under difficult conditions. The company grew and was floated as a public company, manufacturing knitwear, retailing and exporting to many parts of the world. In 1961, the Links Warehouse Group received a most tempting offer from a London property company. This offer was accepted, whereby they purchased the entire family shareholding. However, as a property company, they were only interested in taking over the properties and agreed that the Links brothers should buy back the trading elements and once again trading as a private company, with Morris and I as joint managing directors. The company then moved to larger premises in Trongate, Glasgow. Within the Links Warehouse, an exhibition of Scottish-made goods was held. The exhibition was opened by the ex-Lord Provost of Glasgow, Sir Maher Galpern MP. A departmental competition for the best display was organised. This was judged by Lady Galpern, who was presented with a tartan travelling rug. Glasgow Jewish Scouting. During 1956, I was approached by the then Scoutmaster Arthur Jacobson and also Joel Sneeder, inquiring if I would agree to help the 93rd Glasgow Norman Scout Group. As an ex-scout in the 183rd Glasgow Scout Group in 1932, I was naturally interested. The 93rd Scout Group were experiencing great financial difficulties, having had the building materials donated by the Glasgow Corporation stolen. It set the group back, plus the fact that the community showed little interest. I agreed to accept a position as chairman of the Parents' Committee, my son Jonathan having then joined the Scout Group. I was successful in gathering together a small number of parents and interested friends, and together we managed to get the fundraising going again, and after several years we were able to build the new Scout Hall, which was opened on the 1st of June 1958 at Queen's Drive by Dr. Alec Binney, one of the early Scoutmasters. District Commissioner McGilvery took the march salute at the march past of Brownies, Cubs, Scouts and Guides. The new building was consecrated by the minister of Niddry Road Synagogue, Reverend Silberman, chaplain of the Scout Group. The Sales Managers Association. As sales director of the Links Warehouse Group, I joined the Sales Managers Association, latterly renamed the Institute of Marketing. I served on the committee as secretary, then treasurer, and eventually was elected chairman under the presidency of the Marquess of Bute, a position I held for 3 years, ultimately being appointed a fellow of the National Institute of Marketing. Glasgow Maccabi. I was invited by Leslie Diamond and Joe Wilson to take an interest in Glasgow Maccabi. This organisation was experiencing problems with the committee, and in particular its chairman. I agreed to take on the chairmanship for a trial period of 3 months to assess if I could improve the situation. My chairmanship lasted 6 years. At that time, Maccabi was housed in the old Tudor cinema Giffnock, which was totally unsuitable for young people to meet and difficult to supervise. The Giffnock synagogue, in the meantime, had purchased ground to build a new synagogue in Kilmarnock Road. The Glasgow Jewish Charitable Trust, controlled by Effie and Melech Goldberg and a group of influential businessmen, decided to purchase and give Glasgow Maccabi the school show premises in May Terrace under my committee's care to organise a youth club under the auspices of Maccabi. This was achieved after some years and some very intensive work and organisation by many people. It would be impossible to mention at this time all the names involved. However, it would be wrong to omit the names of some of the stalwarts who supported me through thick and thin. Jerry Cousins, Nat Hillman, Frieda Tuck, Frieda Lander, A.B. Sperber, and not forgetting the late Lionel Davidson, without whom our achievements would have been more than difficult. The removal of Maccabi from the Tudor cinema to Giffnock Show compound took place during June 1964. A temporary building was opened by Joseph Olson in 1965 and consecrated by Reverend Cosgrove. The foundation stone for a new gymnasium was laid by Leslie Diamond in 1965 and consecrated by Rabbi Dr. Wolf Gottlieb. During 1967, the new gymnasium was opened by Pierre Gilsosgame, president of World Maccabi, and consecrated by Rabbi Rosen of Giffnock Synagogue. The main building was opened by David Links in 1970. I then retired as chairman, having served in this office from 1965. Now, in 1999, Maccabi has hosted the European Games in Stirling, extended the premises which incorporates many of the main communal organisations of the city, such as Jewish Care, the JNF Abraham Link Suite, JIA, and others, plus a very popular bridge club. Maccabi itself now being one of the most successful clubs in the country. Abraham Links died on 14th of July 1953. The Links family commissioned Benno Schatz, RSA, the Queen's sculptor in Scotland, to design a bronze bust of Abraham Links. This was erected in the main vestibule of the Wilson Street warehouse, and later it was presented to the Glasgow Jewish Archives. On the first yahrzeit of our father's death, my brother Morris and I purchased a house in 43 Queen Square as a permanent communal memorial for the use as meeting rooms for the JNF, JIA and all the other Zionist societies. This was opened on the 9th of September 1955 by Mrs. Annie Links, in the presence of all the Links family. Several other well-known Glasgow Zionist families also contributed and endowed rooms in their names: Schenkens, Carter, Galummuck and Haas. The Abraham Links house was sold by the GNF in 1999 and re-established within the Maccabi compound as the Abraham Links Suite.